What's happening, guys? Welcome to episode 4 of Quarantine Combos. This one was, I kind of edited it a little bit because people were asking like, should I compete? When should I compete? So I wanted to address the overall topic of when you're ready to compete, because I think determining when you're ready is a pretty big factor in whether or not you should compete, when you should compete, and all that kind of stuff. So first thing we're going to talk about is why. Why do you want to compete? I think right now, and myself and a lot of other people in my position as people who genuinely just love bodybuilding, whether it's competing or not, people who are coaches and that kind of stuff, the idea of competing, the general appearance is that it's cool right now. People like the idea of getting up on stage, getting these photos, getting admiration from your peers, people saying, oh my God, you look so good, look how far you've come, and all that kind of stuff. And that's great, and that comes with it. You're gonna get people saying that stuff because you're taking your body to a very different place and probably getting in the best shape of your life. But I find people are starting to chase the idea of competing for getting that external like input, you know what I mean? Like, it's not because, you know, in their hearts they're like, oh, I love bodybuilding, I love competing, I love taking my physique to a new level, I love the dedication, I love the work. They're doing it to get this, you know, standing ovation from everybody around them, and that's not good, and it doesn't end well because, you know, prep's not easy. It's very hard, it's lonely, it's mentally fatiguing, physically fatiguing. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing by the end of it. And when all that stuff, you know, starts to hit, no matter the praise you get from other people, it doesn't just make that stuff go away. You're the person that has to deal with that. And then after the show, when you inevitably have to gain weight back because being at that, you know, lean condition for an extended period of time is not healthy. It's not sustainable for most people. And then, you know, you start to get back to more of a normal looking body, and then that admiration goes away because now you're just normal again. So I think, you know, just understanding that there are right reasons to compete and wrong reasons to compete, and just really sitting down and having a conversation with yourself why you're competing and if you fall under the right reasons or the wrong reasons, and just making sure that you know, you're in the right reason category. So that's just the first thing to think about. Second thing is, you know, have you built a good base? Have you built a solid, you know, physique? Because people think that competing, I still get people that see my stage photos or see me, you know, at the end of a prep, and they're like, wow, you built so much muscle, blah, blah, and that's not how this works. When you're prepping for a show, you're simply peeling back the layers, peeling back the body fat to see what you've built underneath. You're not building anything on prep, especially naturally. So you have to really look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, have I done, you know, enough work to warrant stepping on stage? Have I built a good solid foundation? Have I built a good physique? Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. This is about building a physique and then displaying that on stage. And if you don't have anything to display and you haven't really built anything, well, then maybe it's not the time to compete. For myself, so I competed my first show 2015. It was October, November 2015. So that's 5 years ago, so I would have been 21. And I had already been training from the age of like 13, 14, 15. So I had already had like 6 or 7 years of pretty solid training under my belt and built like a reasonable base for being 21. And, you know, for my structure, for my size, as someone being natural, I didn't look out of place on stage. And I think now, because people are rushing to jump on stage, or they're jumping the gun, you're seeing a very broad spectrum on stage of people that are, you know, very much have done a lot of work, have put a lot of effort into it for years and years and years, and then finally step on stage and then there's the other side of the spectrum where people say, okay, I'm gonna step on stage in 12 weeks, and just kind of decide that on a whim without really having an understanding of what that 12 weeks is gonna have to consist of, and B, what should have been done prior to that 12 weeks. And I just wanna say that I'm not against someone stepping on stage after a year of training or whatever, because some people can do that and look amazing. It's very much individual, and all this stuff that I'm going to be talking about is very much individual. It's very specific to you. That's why I say you need to look at yourself in the mirror and have a conversation with yourself and figure out where you land on this spectrum, because I could have easily have said at 21 that I'm still not ready, or I could have said at 19 I'm ready, right? It's very individual, right? And then it also comes back to, what is your goal on stage? Do you want to go on stage to win and be competitive and progress within the sport, or are you just wanting to go on stage as a personal challenge for yourself and do that? And that varies greatly to what you might need to do to get there, right? Someone who is only been training for a year and a half might be able to step on stage because that's all their goal is, whereas someone who wants to compete and win and progress and do well, maybe they need more time. Maybe they need to invest more time in developing their physique. So that's just something else to consider, is how long you've been working on your base and developing your physique. So next up is nutrition. What is your kind of overall approach with nutrition? Do you have an understanding of how to eat intelligently to build muscle, and then in turn how to eat to lose body fat? And obviously that's where someone like myself as a coach can be a guide and be helpful with that. But you need to kind of come into things with an understanding of, okay, I'm probably going to eat multiple small meals a day. I'm going to try to disperse protein through all those meals, consume carbohydrates around my training, make sure I'm drinking lots of water, like all these little things. Like, do you have that kind of baseline understanding? Because if someone comes into, like say someone comes to me and they're like, okay, I want to compete. Okay, well, when do you want to compete? 10 months from now. Okay, that's maybe a reasonable amount of time. And then they send me their diet, and their diet in the morning is a sandwich, peanut butter sandwich. Maybe it's like an orange juice. Then for lunch they have like something stupid, like a little soup thing from a restaurant, like from Tim Hortons or something. And then dinner is random, right? Maybe they cook something, maybe they eat out. You can't expect to be successful in this if you don't have those eating habits in check beforehand, right? If you're coming into a prep and you're eating in that manner, and then all of a sudden I send you your nutrition plan and it's a complete 180, completely different, like, you're not going to be successful. I shouldn't say that. Maybe some people will. Some people will be able to make that complete overhaul and still get the job done. But in my experience, most of the time that doesn't happen. Usually it's developing these good habits with nutrition beforehand, having an understanding of, okay, I'm trying to lose body fat. That means I need to be in a deficit. That means I need to consume less than I burn. Like, these little things, I'm not saying you need to know everything in and out, but having a baseline understanding of how this whole thing works from a fat loss perspective when it comes to prep, and a muscle gaining perspective when you're not prepping, is super important. Numerous times we as coaches have people, like I said, submit their nutrition, and it's just completely all over the place. There's no structure, there's no rhyme or reason. It's very haphazard throughout the day by day. They just kind of grab and go, and there's no real structure to that. And I think at least before you're prepping, having a good amount of time of starting to track your food and understanding how many calories am I eating per day, how much protein, carbs, fats, that stuff's super easy to figure out. There's free apps on your phone that you can use to determine these things, and making sure you're drinking water, making sure having all these little habits in check. That way when you start prep and it gets much more serious, it's not so much of an overhaul, right? Another thing is your knowledge of competing. This is a huge one, and I talked about this on yesterday's podcast with Brandon. I think people need to really have a good grasp of what actually competing is. I think bodybuilding is like the only sport where people just all of a sudden will be like, oh, I want to compete. Whereas like you take any other sport, like no one's gonna just wake up one day and be like, oh, I want to be a really good hockey player and just expect to be good, right? People will be like, oh, I want to compete, and in 2 months expect to be on stage looking shredded and winning all these championships. Like, that's not how this works. So I think before you even look into competing. And a client actually messaged me yesterday wanting some information, and I was very kudos to her, because she wanted to know where she could get some information. So checking out the organization's website. So for here in Canada, the Canadian Physique Alliance is the most prominent one. So going on their website, getting an understanding of the classes and the judging and that kind of stuff. Watching videos of how shows are structured. Myself and numerous other people have show day vlogs, so you can see like basically through the day how things go with your tanning, with your registration, timing of your food, actually being on stage, all that stuff. Like if you can figure that out beforehand, it's a really good idea. Just going to a show and not having an understanding of how it's structured, or what's expected of you on stage, like you don't do that anywhere else. No one goes to a football game without an understanding of the rules of the game, or no one goes to a tennis match without understanding the rules of tennis. But people still go to bodybuilding shows, and when the judges say turn to the right, people turn to the left, or when judges say exit stage right, they exit stage left. Like all these little things that we don't necessarily think about, but it shows who puts the effort in and the time in and has really done their work and researched everything, and it shows on stage, right? So just having a good understanding of the structure of the show, what's required as an athlete on show day, going to shows. I think that's huge, right? Going to actually experience shows and witness what's all involved and how things are done is very important. I really think that. Another point I want to touch on is your mental health and body image, because this is something that needs to be talked about more, because a lot of people come out of this with struggles, with issues, right? And it simply seems to stem from getting into, so you start at position A, right? Where you're for the most part, we're normal, right? We have a reasonable level of body fat. People look at you and, you're fit, you're healthy, you look good, right? The general population would say that most people that are involved in this sport beforehand are healthy and they look good. Then you diet with the goal of getting to an extreme level. Specifically talking with me as a bodybuilder, we have to get to very, very low levels of body fat, and that applies to all classes. With just varying degrees, whether it's bikini, figure, bodybuilding, men's physique, whatever. You have to get to an extreme, and that extreme is not sustainable, it's not maintainable, and for a long period of time, it's not healthy, right? For the most part, you want to get in stage condition, do the show, maybe do a photo shoot like a day or two later, and then start coming out of it, because you don't want to stay there for long, because there's hormonal issues that can come out of that. People have digestive issues that can come out of that, and just numerous other things that need to be, fixed, right? And managed before they get, worse, before they get really bad. So if you're someone who has issues with their body, with their body image, right? Like if you look at yourself in the mirror on a regular basis and you're not happy with what you look like, or you have a skewed idea of what you look like, like some people see themselves as maybe heavier than they are, or they see themselves skinnier than they are, or whatever the case may be, prep might not be the best of ideas, in all honesty. And until you get those things well behind you, those demons, in the past, then I would really highly recommend you not pursue prepping at this point, because it'll only most of the time exacerbate things and make it worse, right? I've seen numerous guys and girls come out of prep. My fiance, for example, she came out of it with a lot of digestive issues and struggles with food and binge eating and stuff, and she talks about that openly, because she's not alone. And I told her that she needs to share her journey, because a lot of people, especially girls, go through it and feel ashamed, or they don't talk about it, or they think it's just them, when most of the time it's not. A lot of people have come out of competing with some kind of baggage, right? Whether it's binge eating issues, whether it's issues with digestion, whether it's a hyper focus with training and they just can't stop and they just feel the need to do an hour of cardio every day and all this kind of stuff that can come out of it. I mean, for myself, I would say that I've come out of most shows pretty unscathed as far as long-term issues go, but after shows, I will be the first to admit that I struggle with managing my food and not overeating and gaining weight too quickly and all this kind of stuff. But I have a pretty good grasp on all that stuff, so even if it's for a week of me just being an idiot with food and eating way more than I need to, I can kind of manage it, and then after a week, 2 weeks, whatever, like it's gone and I don't have any further issues. But some people aren't that fortunate. Some people really, really struggle. So if you're thinking about competing and trying to determine if you're ready to compete, make sure that you can honestly say that I don't have any of these issues. I don't have any body image issues or mental health issues when it comes to food or training, exercise, or whatever. So that's something that I think is really important. So that's all I got for you today, guys. Short and sweet, 15-16 minute video regarding whether or not you're ready to compete and just kind of some things to think about before you make that commitment, right? I know a lot of people can feel peer pressured into doing it, or if they remotely post anything about it, then people are jumping on them saying, oh my god, I can't wait to see you, blah blah, and then they feel they have to do it, and then that's when issues start to arise. So make sure you have a good grasp of training, nutrition, your mental health's in check, your body image is in a good place. Make sure you have an understanding of what's involved with a prep, with show day, with coming out of the show and being in a position I am now where you're reversing out of it to keep things healthy and in check. And yeah, just making sure that when you make that call, it's a good call and you're ready to make the leap, because for me, bodybuilding has done nothing but bring me joy and happiness, and I really want other people to experience that if they're in the same boat as me and they genuinely love and care about it. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.